Hi, this is Tucker Johnson. I'm actually coming to you with an intro to this session today. We had John Tinsley and Mihai Vlad talking about Language Weaver. It's an excellent episode. However, there are some sections of the live cast where the audio got cut out, and for that I do apologize. If you missed something important because of this, then please reach out to us, reach out to John, reach out to Mihai. They will be very happy to answer your questions, or you can reach out to us here at Nimsy Insights. We can talk about Language Weaver, we can talk about any of the other platforms out there. One last note is that we will be talking about this tool called Language Weaver today. I want to make clear that this is not an endorsement from Nimsy. This is not sponsored content or anything. This is more of a public service announcement. There's a tool out there that's going to help people solve their problems, and we want to make sure that you know about it. If you have a similar story or a similar tool that you think the Nimsy audience needs to know about, please let us know. Reach out to us. And with that, I will let you go and enjoy the rest of the recording. Hello and welcome to an episode of Nimsy Live. As usual, these are pop-up episodes that we do. There's no set time or place for these. So if you want to be notified when we do these podcasts, livecasts, whatever they are, make sure to subscribe to Nimsy Insights on all channels. And if you miss it, if you're watching this not live, if you're watching one of the recordings, either on our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, what have you, then make sure to leave a comment down there below. Make sure to subscribe so that you're notified next time. Today we have two guests, which means I had to completely reconfigure everything to fit two people on screen here. But we have Mihai Vlad and Dr. John Tinsley from RWS, and we are going to be talking about Language Weaver. If you're not aware of what Language Weaver is, this is the live cast for you. But really quick, a note about Nimsy Insights. We are a market research and consulting analyst agency specialized in globalization, helping companies go global. We do a lot of work in the language services industry, a lot of background in localization, translation, internationalization, all of the things that it takes your global brand to succeed in the global marketplace. How many times can I say global? I don't know. But enough from me. I want to get to our guest here. Welcome. Thank you for coming on with us and talking about Language Weaver. John, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, first, thanks for having us. And I'm delighted that I'm in the middle here now, because when you're both on screen, I get to look left and right so that I can look as if I'm speaking with you. But anyway, yeah, so my name is John Tinsley. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. I'm the former CEO of Iconic Translation Machines, which is a machine translation software provider that was acquired by RWS. Actually, this day last year, that's the 1-year anniversary of that acquisition. And now I'm the VP of AI Product and Marketing at RWS, and more specifically, Language Weaver, which I'm excited to tell you and everybody a little bit more about over the next half an hour or so.
Half an hour for however long it takes. Thanks. Good to meet you, John, and truly good to meet you. This is the first time we've actually ever met face to face. That's what we were just talking about 5 minutes ago. Likewise with you, Mihai. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yes, sir.
Great to be here.
Yeah. And what do you do at RWS? Tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you working on? What's your title?
Very good. So I've been with RWS for, say, if we bring the SDL history, 4 years and a half, and I was in charge of building or rebuilding Language Weaver ultimately. Do you know that SDL acquired Language Weaver probably, 10 years ago? And we had to migrate the technology from the old statistical machine translation to neural machine translation, and obviously migrating customers and bringing all the innovation. And what we're announcing right now is revamp or bringing back the brand that so many people love. And ultimately, my role here is the MD of the group. An MD meaning managing director, not medical doctor.
As we were filling out titles, he said, "Oh, just put MD." I was like, "You're a doctor?"
Hey, MD.
Hey, I've got a mole for you to look at if that's the case. So after this, stay on the line. Well, you kind of got into it a little bit with the history. That's the first thing I wanted to talk about because what we're talking about today is Language Weaver. What is Language Weaver? And maybe this is a good place.
Put what Language Weaver is today is it is the new machine translation brand of RWS.
Okay.
But I think why it is the brand of machine translation for RWS is the interesting story to tell here. So, like I said, so historically there wasn't any proprietary machine translation at RWS. So an Iconic was acquired, like I said, this time last year, and we operated independently as part of the RWS group, continuing to operate as Iconic. And then SDL was subsequently acquired by RWS later in 2020 and had a large machine translation operation headed up by Mihai. And ultimately, we decided to bring those teams and technologies together, and that's what we've been working at behind the scenes over the last number of months. But what we also wanted was a strong brand and identity to reflect that this is more than just machine translation at RWS. We wanted to reflect, the heritage of our teams. And so we decided, it's a brand that has heritage. It's known in the area of machine translation. A lot of our customers still know the brand, because that was maybe what they originally bought from us. And so we thought, what better thing to do than to bring this brand back, to have it reflect that this is now the former Iconic team, the former SDL Machine Translation team, as part of RWS, the world's largest language service provider. And I think what we also wanted to do is reflect that this is more than just, the sum of its parts. What we say internally, this is not 1 + 1 = 2. We're trying to make this 1 + 1 = more than that. And it's really cool because what we noticed when we started discussions around, kind of our client overlap, our technology, our teams, while there was a lot of overlap, there were also a lot of unique aspects to both. And bringing them together is really exciting because the result is definitely more than some of its parts. It's a very powerful combination. And the curious thing, which maybe we can get into a little bit later, is both companies had, both machine translation teams and technologies had very similar paths that operated very independently of each other, but ultimately led to the same place, which is Language Weaver today as part of the RWS group.
So there's an aspect of like bringing back the old school to this, right? Like classic, because it's an old brand. I mean, old is not the right word. It's a brand with history. Let's just say it's a brand with brand recognition. It's been around, and so there's an aspect of bringing back an old brand, but doing very new things with it.
Do you know the story of what the name comes from?
You're going to tell me, and it's going to be a great
I
story.
think I am. So you're right about the heritage and how far back it actually goes. So ultimately, the name Weaver comes from Warren Weaver, who was a scientist and a mathematician. And in 1949, when everyone was trying to get computers to ultimately perform complex tasks, like translation, as an example, a lot of the people were looking at this problem as a linguistic one. And Warren Weaver came up with a different approach, more like a mathematical approach. And he came up with a memorandum, the translation memorandum, in 1949, and listed 4 ideas on how computers could address this problem. And the wildest one was to look at translations. The translation task is a cryptography problem, i.e., if you want to translate Russian into English, you should just imagine that Russian is encrypted English. And then what you need to do then is to break the code or decode it. And strangely enough, 72 years after, if you open up a machine translation model, the most modern one, like a neural machine translation one, you're still going to find a decoder and an encoder, or an encoder and a decoder. And this is how the technology works. So Warren Weaver was right, and everyone in the industry knows this. And the fact that we can use this name to tell exactly what John has mentioned, the fact that we have so much background and so much expertise in bringing this research and building products and putting them in the hands of the customers to solve real business problems is ultimately what we're about. And the name is just the best name you can have for this. So we're very proud of it. So you're right, it has a lot of heritage, and it's precisely what we're all about.
I love the name, but there's much more to it than the name. So let's get into this. I want to go over some of the points from the press release because it was pretty clear, but let's go into it a little bit more. Lots of talk about integrations, automations, compatibility with other tools. Let's talk about that a little bit because it seems, from what I'm the research that I've done onto it, it seems like a very customizable solution. So, what are some of the use cases? How do people integrate this? How do clients integrate this into their platforms, their existing platforms?
So this is pretty much the core tenet of what we're trying to do here. You can have one size fits all with language technology, with machine translation, with AI and machine learning, and that will solve lots of problems. But the reality is the types of organizations that we're working with, government organizations, global enterprises, law firms, have complex challenges that aren't really resolvable with off-the-shelf solutions. So what we try to do is have those off-the-shelf solutions, but have them be as flexible and extensible as possible to address the many and varied challenges that our customers face. And so that can happen on multiple levels. So for example, when it comes to the core machine translation technology, you could have a generic machine translation system. You could have one that's customized by the user. You could have one that's customized by our expert team. Again, cutting the cloth to measure depending on what the user needs. Some customers like the cloud. Some customers want to deploy it themselves on their premise. Some customers want us to deploy it on their premise for them. Some customers want to integrate with our API. Some want to use our web portal. Some want to use connectors that we have into existing platforms that they use. So what we're trying to do is build a platform, a suite of technologies, of interfaces, of deployment mechanisms to suit those many and varied requirements of the customers. And any one of those points that I mentioned, we can drill down to in massive amounts of detail. But from a surface level, that's what we do, what we're trying to achieve, and what we will continue to do going forward.
Yeah, the challenge is, as with anything, it's finding the balance between customizability and simplicity. I want to say, right? Because it's like, on the one hand, I find talking to clients, buyers of solutions like this, is they want something simple. They really want something simple, and there's some technologies out there, some language technologies out there really market themselves on how simple they make the process, how easy they make the process. And I think that is a brilliant marketing strategy, especially in this day and age. We have decision makers who are looking at tools like this who grew up with the smartphone in their hands, because that's the generation that's now coming into decision making status. And if you grew up with a smartphone in your hand, you grew up with an app for everything. And everything is just super simple. Like, we are spoiled these days. And then we get to this localization thing, and it's not simple. And no one wants to be told how complicated it is. So, like, when you start going into the details, I've always seen people's eyes start to glaze over. But what I'm hearing from you is, like, this is as complicated as you want to make it, right? It's here. It's simple. It's usable. But if you want to become a power user, if you want to get fancy, if you want to integrate it with your systems, ... fill in the blank, then we got a solution for you.
And you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Tucker. And as John was mentioning, the core tenet of what we do is making sure that the technology addresses a business problem. Not just making it simple for the sake of marketing it as simple, but truly solving a business problem. And we have a large array of enterprise and government customers who sometimes need a bespoke adaptation or a bespoke setup or more scalability or more throughput or less throughput, more quality or quality that's actually suitable or it generates enough productivity within the domain where they operate. And it is that last mile of the journey of machine translation, which is fundamental to solve right now. Because you can absolutely get some generic technology and it's sometimes simple, but it does not address the whole journey. And we solve that problem in three ways. We either provide very easy to use adaptation tools, both on premise and in the cloud, which is fairly unique. Secondly, we ultimately come and help the customer if they want further adaptations or further fine-tuning. And we have a large team of computational linguists and researchers who are able to perform these adaptations. And then thirdly, if we can't do more with the technology, the beauty is that being part of RWS, we're surrounded by thousands of linguists who can actually bridge that last step to ultimately deliver either perfection or suitable content. So that last mile is what we're all about. And this is where our research efforts are going into. And this is where customers are focusing right now, because ultimately more and more content will pass through this system. So John probably will tell you more, because the beauty is that both companies that form right now Language Weaver come from the same background. And whilst we're operating in various verticals or serving different customers, we were approaching the market the same way. Start with research, productize research, put it into the hands of customers to solve a business problem, and then make sure you actually help them all the way. Not just package a beautiful product that you can market, but truly solve a business problem. I'm sure
you bring up last mile. Talk a little bit about that. Well, I don't want to disrupt the train of thought, but let's put a pin in that. I want to talk about what that means, last mile, because a lot of people perhaps have never heard that term before. And specifically, I'd like to hear like how Language Weaver applies to that. But I do notice like we've got a bunch of people watching right now, particularly on LinkedIn. If you're on another platform, the party's over on LinkedIn, but nobody's leaving any comments. So feel free to engage with the conversation. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, put them in the comments, and I can try to bring them up on screen. It's been a little fishy recently with the functionality. But sorry, that was my plug. Last mile, John.
Well, and so the localized version of the last mile is the last 1.6 kilometers as well, just for the metric folks. No, so I love this analogy of the last mile. So we give a tip of the hat to Bart Mashinsky, our VP of Solutions. So the concept is there's a great analogy here with the concept of travel, right? So your generic solutions here, your easy to use online machine translation tools or whatever, they're mass transit. They can do big chunks for you very well. They can get you from London to New York, and then they can get you to Penn Station really easy. But then you got to find your 5th floor Airbnb somewhere on West 38th Street, though it turns out the entrance is actually on 8th Avenue somewhere. So you did the big chunk. You got 80%
I am
of the
feeling
way there.
this in my bones. This is a great
raining.
metaphor. Thank you.
It's raining. You just stepped in a puddle, and you need to go that last mile. And how do you do that? And that's actually the hard part. And that's the analogy we use. So yeah, your easy to use off the shelf stuff, which we absolutely do, can get you 80% of the way there, 90% of the way there. But what happens when you are that global enterprise, that government department who needs that extra 10, 20%, which is a highly customized empty model? It's some very complex on-premise, highly scalable deployment, something hyper secure. And that's what we do. So it's trying to find the best of both worlds. It's trying to be able to solve those, the problems in a simple way, but when the customer inevitably requires something complex, and a lot of our customers will come to us and be like, this is tricky. And we all got to put our heads together and work it out. And sometimes it takes time. That we can absolutely do that as well. And I think, like Mihai was where he was going there, that's a factor of kind of where we've respectively come from. So to dip back a little bit, so Iconic was founded in 2012 as a spin out from Dublin City University, and we just focused on patent translation. That was our niche or niche. We're like, we're not going to try and do any of the other stuff. We're going to focus on patent translation, and we did it, and we did it really well. And it was like our beachhead first step on the ladder. And then we said, okay, we want to expand this business. So we started to focus on other sectors, but very specific use cases, building very concrete solutions to those problems and doing it really well. And if a customer wanted something that we didn't do really well, we would say, that's not our area of expertise, but we can help with this. And then on the flip side, kind of originating where the original language Weaver did. So it was a spin out from the University of Southern California back in 2002. And it heavily focused on government use cases back then. And they're still a large proportion of the business today. And then that obviously expanded as part of SDL and under Mihai's leadership to solving really complex enterprise problems with lots of technology, lots of interfaces, lots of scalability, lots of security. And so what we're doing now is bringing those together. And it sounds like a cliche, but it really is that best of both worlds element. We were doing certain things really well in a particular way. Mihai and the guys were doing other things, a lot of overlap, but other things distinctly very well. And now we can actually, take that technology better than the sum of its parts and solve all of those problems. And it sounds idealistic, but it's a reality, and that's what's really exciting about it. It's not just a catchy line. It's actually what we're doing every day.
I was going to say it does sound cliche, right? Like, because it's like the sum is more than its parts, but sometimes cliches are true, right? And that's always the goal, is to create something. Because if you're not, especially with an organization like you guys, is you've got a lot of parts. So if you can really be leveraging these synergies that you have from all of these moving parts, so as all of these parts, when put together, the sum is greater than the whole. Oh, I got blocked by a comment. Then wow, what a benefit for the consumer, right? What a benefit for the buyers if that can be taken place. Let's take a look at this comment though here. What do we got? Antonia B, thanks for joining. Everything I hear about content workflows, I think about the life of the content. Why don't you see more evolution in proxy because of the multiple back end of repositories? Why not scrap at the display level for content, etc.? Do you see this ever gaining traction? That is an excellent question with many polysyllabic words that confuse me. So I'll leave it to you guys. I'll leave it to the doctor and the MD.
So let me take a first stab at this, but and I want to come back to a third part which we haven't mentioned, which is very close to my heart, but we'll answer the question very briefly. So if I understand well the question, it is how do we deal with content, and how do we deal with proxies that sit in front of the content. Maybe you, John, have a completely different take on this one. But the beauty in RWS is that we can look at the spectrum of content and literally break it down into its subcomponents, and we can address a part with pure technology, sometimes with customized technology, sometimes with technology plus a bit of post-editing, sometimes only with specialists. And we have a group, the linguistic consulting group, which is able to actually look at the mix of content that the customer has and ultimately recommend the best solution. So we're not dogmatic about you have got to use this technology or you have got to use this service. And this is a massive advantage to actually have a technology first approach, but at the same time be surrounded by ultimately all the prowess of RWS and all the linguistic expertise to truly address a large content challenge. And I one of the big challenges we have is sometimes real-time content or content where customers do not have enough budget to translate appropriately or at the highest quality, and sometimes these proxies are set in front of websites, and if this is the case, and we were actually working on and still are working on a solution where we're advising customers on trying to take some risks with some of the content, because the school of thought is you have got to perfectly translate your content because it's your website. You do not want to go to market with an imperfect content. It's your image, it's your brand, but you don't have the budget, and you still don't want to use machine translation. So there's a bit of a challenge. There's a chicken and egg. And if you zoom out a bit and you look at this problem purely as a marketing challenge, where you want to increase your clicks or ultimately your visitors, maybe you should start purely with machine translation and ultimately see whether the number of clicks increase.
Like that.
So instead of like having
dipping your toe in the water, right? Is the analogy I like to use. Like, is it warm? Is it cold? Like, should I jump in? And I love that because that's what MT allows us to do. It allows us to test. No, I mean, we've always been able to test. It allows us to test without incurring a bunch of costs, right? So
there are
some elements of done is, done is better than perfect, right? It's better to have something like done imperfectly than not done. Maybe I think I've completely mixed that up.
That's my jam. Okay, so like the first deck, like internal NIMSY deck I ever made, like when we first founded, I don't even know if we were announced as a company yet, but we flew to Dublin to meet with Constantine Dranch was one of our first people. Hey Constantine, if you're watching. Sandra Oliver. Anyways, one of my first decks, so we had like the vision statement and all of that, but where was I going with this? The quote. I had this Voltaire quote in it, and it's perfect is the enemy of the best, right? Or the best is the enemy of good enough, or something like that. I don't know. I don't speak French, but it's like le meilleur c'est l'ennemi de good enough, right?
Perfect is the enemy of good, isn't it?
I think that's it. Perfection is the enemy of good enough, right? And I think that is like, let's translate that into corporate talk, which is, minimal viable product, which is agile, which is move fast and break things, which is disruption, right? And that's just what it means. But I see a lot of folks struggling out there, companies struggling out there because they're wanting to make something perfect. And nope, let's move. Right? Let's move. This live stream is a perfect example of that, right? I've got comments coming up over my face. I've got, all of this stuff. But you know what? We're doing this, right? And I wanted to, because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Do you guys have a hard stop at the end of the hour? Okay.
No.
Well, but still, I'd like to move on because I'm dying to ask you about this.
Come on.
The U.S. Army, right? We were talking about unnecessarily over-complex things, and I was like, all right, U.S. government, let's talk about that. In the press release, you mentioned that the Dreamweaver, Language Waiver, there's a deployment to help the U.S. Army communicate with their comrades in South Korea. Tell me about this. I'm probably totally botching this, but this is a fascinating use case.
Yeah, so I mean, as John mentioned, a lot of the use cases involve, a lot of the use cases for machine translation involve real-time communication or large volumes of text to be analyzed, and that could be open source intelligence, that could be extracting intelligence from content. So that's in the legal sphere, this is called e-discovery. In the government sphere, is called open source intelligence. It's a fairly common use case, and we were actually helping some organizations ultimately bridge or break down this barrier of language in between teams that actually have to collaborate, and doing that and taking into consideration the risks of getting that wrong. It's quite a challenge, but we've been doing this for 19 years, and we've been doing that fairly well. And that's where we're fairly known in the community, and people still refer to us as Language Weaver. and that's kind of like where it's coming from. Actually, I wanted to pivot a bit on maybe a third component on the previous questions you mentioned.
You guys take this conversation where you want to. Don't wait for me, right?
Yeah, so I wanted...
Make my job easy.
Cool. So, I mean, I usually get this question is like, it's clearly I have an accent, which is not Irish, and my name's a bit conspicuous, to say the least. So, so my last name is actually Romanian. I'm Romanian. I'm coming from the middle of Transylvania. I'm not a descendant of Dracula or whatnot, but this is usually what's...
I'm sure you get a lot of comments about
I do,
that.
especially at the border, and a lot of that.
Just like when people find out my name's Tucker, you know, there's things that rhyme with Tucker. I'm like, yeah, ha, ha, ha. I've heard it before, right?
There you go.
So I'll spare you the Transylvania jokes.
There you go. And there is actually a beautiful story. So actually, Language Weaver is built out of three big centers. One is LA, so with University of South California, Dublin, and there is a third element or a third pillar, which is Cluj, in the middle of Transylvania. So that's actually the town or the city I'm coming from. And the link with Language Weaver is that actually one of the founders of Language Weaver was born in Cluj. He was also Romanian. So this is probably one of the best stories in terms of software that came out of Cluj. There were a few others, but we have a large team in Cluj that's building like the cloud product, so the heavy duty, multi-scalable things and operating multiple regions. But I want to give a tip of the hat to the guys in Cluj. So it's not just Western Europe, but we're blending multiple regions together. So there you go. Truly multilingual, truly multicultural.
Truly multicultural, truly multilingual. Shout out to the guys in Cluj. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Cluj?
Cluj. With the J.
With the J. Shout out to you guys if there's anybody watching. Awesome. So that I'm gonna go back to my list here.
But that's a cool point as well, and it related to kind of the founders of Iconic and Language Weaver. Like I mentioned, Language Weaver was founded as a spin-out from University of Southern California. So we have a huge R&D team based in Los Angeles still, and Iconic was founded from Dublin City University, and we've also got a scientific and engineering team based here, and then there's that team in Cluj as well. So it's a globally spread, multinational, multilingual, multicultural team, which kind of feels like what you should have when you have a product called Language Weaver and you're solving complex multilingual challenges for customers. So it fits.
It fits.
Yeah. No, sorry, carry on. No, I was just about to say is like we were so keen to bring the name back and to get us back to where we started, our research roots. And people should definitely check out our research page on the website, so on languageweaver.com, because we have some really cool stuff that we're working on. So if people want to join our team on any of these three.
After the translation, if we're handing off machine translations and someone is then post-editing them or quality reviewing them, clearly we can do that from within the broader RWS team. But are customers searching through these documents? Are they trying to like summarize them to capture specific insights or information that's in there? We're like, a lot of this technology, summarization, information extraction, it's all built on the same machine learning technology, the same AI technology. Maybe we could build some of that, as part of our technology workflow, kind of have a smarter MT workflow that, takes in your content, does some cool stuff to it before we translate it. And then after it's done, gives you back the translated version with certain things highlighted with some digestible summaries of the document and, the things that you wanted to find already marked up. And so that's why, when we talk about our machine translation business within RWS and wanting to have that be bigger and bigger and grow that, it's about looking at from a technology perspective, what more can we do beyond just the core machine translation, which will always be there and will always be state of the art and will probably continue to get better, but what more value can we add? And so that's that's a lot of what we do. And so then going back to that research point, what's interesting from a research perspective or from a scientific perspective is our teams aren't just training machine translation engines for different customers in different languages every day. We have people who are focused on sentiment analysis, focused on, you know, data anonymization, content insight, summarization, things like that. So from that perspective, even though Language Weaver is the machine translation brand of RWS, actually, I realized my air quotes aren't in the narrow screen. I was doing that. We have to go more bunny ears. So even though we're the machine translation brand of RWS, actually what our team is doing is a lot broader in scope from a technology perspective.
Awesome. I want to bring up really quickly here, quote from Michael. Michael Reed, thank you for Tucker. Le mieux est l'ennemi du bien. That's the Voltaire quote. So sorry for getting that late to you, Michael. I want to say, guys, looking at this, I hadn't looked at this prior to. Oh, let me go over there. I hadn't looked at this prior. But this is, no one can say you guys do not cite your sources. This is a great resource here for anybody, whether you're using Language Weaver or not. Go check out all of this research, all of this work that has been cited here, because this is a nice little jumping off point if you want to really get into. I'm assuming most of these are heavy academic papers that are not like things that I could read on the toilet.
They are all academic papers, and they're all ours. So they are our research jobs. This is basically like if you want to. There's our portfolio of research that we've published. Some of the other secret sauce is still in house, but yeah, like I said, that's your academic, right? So that's going to be of interest to folks who are working, you know, in research in the kind of the deeper science. But if you go 2 tabs across to blog, this is actually a blog series that we started in Iconic and have brought over to Language Weaver called the Neural MT Weekly. So it's basically every week since the middle of 2018, someone in our team has taken a research paper, whether one of our own or somebody else's, and written more of a layman's summary of it, to say, okay, you know, here's an interesting paper on data synthesis for unsupervised training.
Oh, you can filter. You can filter
and
too.
Kind of do a little summary of it, 400 or 500 words, bite size. See the last one from last week there on evaluating gender bias in MT. So we always direct people to go and have a read of that. We have guest writers. We have writers from within our team. And that's a neat resource as well, which is kind of speaking out a little bit more. It's a little bit more accessible than maybe some of the core academic papers. And then at the top, so you can filter based on the topic. So you'll see some topics appear a lot more than others because maybe they're hot topics in the industry, like machine translation quality estimation or multilingual MT or something like that, domain adaptation. So that's another neat resource that we have on the site as well for those who are more, let's say, technologically inclined and are interested in knowing a little bit more about what's under the hood.
I was going to say, I bet you this page doesn't get a ton of traffic, but the people that do visit it are super happy they found it, because
You'd be surprised. We're pleasantly surprised. There's a little bit of a running competition internally as to whose blog posts get the most views after a couple of weeks. So it's in the interest to make the articles more accessible as well, and to explain, you know, how. And I guess that's what we have to do as a company as well, right? We have to explain highly technical concepts in a way that our customers can understand them and understand and appreciate that this is the best way to solve their problem, which in itself can be pretty complex.
Well, and let's talk about that here. I try not to go over 60 minutes on these things because our poor viewers have lives as well and listeners. But let's start wrapping it up here. How do people find out more about this? You know, if someone's watching this and they want to dig deeper, who do they contact? Where do they go? Is there resources available beyond what we've already looked at?
I can't believe we've gotten this far into it and I haven't plugged our webinar series yet.
I'm very good at like just keeping people from plugging things. But now go. I give you permission. Plug the hell out of anything that you want. This is the time.
It's also the answer to your question. So part of what we're doing here, right, is letting people know look, you've known SDL MT, you've known Iconic MT. This is who we are now. This is where we are. This is where you can find us. So we're not gone. We're still here doing what we've been doing for the last collectively 30 plus years. Where we're going from here with Language Weaver is pretty interesting. And so we thought that the best medium, so yeah, we have the website there, and there's a lot of cool information there. There's a lot of fresh pages that have recently been created. We're going to start running a webinar series for 6 weeks, starting in 2 weeks' time, where every Tuesday for 45 minutes, someone on our team is going to come on and tell you a little bit about whether it's a set of products of ours, whether it's a particular solution for an industry, whether it's something to do with the research that we're doing. And it's going to be live. There'll be Q&A. People can answer whatever questions they want. So this is going to start in 2 weeks' time. I think it's the 22nd of June. There's a link on the homepage there to register. The first one will include myself and Mihai, where we're going to tell this story in a little bit more detail, answer questions that folks might have. And then following weeks on, we'll talk about some of those government use cases in a little bit more detail. We'll talk about some of the work we're doing with law firms. We'll talk about some of the beyond MT technology that we just described. So yeah, basically a long, hot summer of Language Weaver webinars, and I would encourage everybody to sign up. So if you swing back to languageweaver.com.
Oh, sorry. Okay, languageweaver.com. I want to make sure people know where to go. So languageweaver.com.
Yeah, and then see just below the fold, you're going to see join the Language Weaver webinar.
Oh yeah, view more. Perfect. So here's how you get it, guys. I'll just accept all cookies. Here's how you go sign up. So 45-minute webinars. We got John Tinsley, you guys, John, Mihai, Paraik, Sheridan, and Dragos. Very cool. Very cool.
And we're so kind that we're running that one twice to accommodate multiple time zones as well.
Nice. Yeah, I wish. No, I don't wish. But localization world is going on right now. As you know, I've been. I don't know if you guys are. You said that you have people there from RWS, but it's a struggle because it's happening at midnight basically for me. I'm here in Seattle because they're on the east, so I appreciate the time zone consideration. Mihai, any final thoughts as we're wrapping up here?
It is.
I like how I just put you on the spot. I just put you on the big screen and say, talk. Close us out.
You probably caught us in probably one of our proudest days as a team, because we've been working very hard to bring this to life. And
I can tell just by talking to you guys, just by like looking at you, that this isn't like you're proud of this. This is your baby. And so I was sorry to interrupt, but like, thank you for letting me be a part of announcing this. This is cool. I like seeing new things like this, but I did interrupt. Sorry.
No. I mean, thank you for having us. And there are tens of other people that have been working really hard to bring this to life and combine the technologies and the teams and ensure that ultimately all of our customers get the best of this combination, which is what we're all about. Ultimately, we are here because we don't just want to do research. We want to do some research that we productize and we give to customers to solve a business problem. So we're going to continue to do that right after this webinar.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys very much for coming on today. It's been a lot of fun. It's been nice to finally here's my rabbit ears, meet you guys in person. And let's do it again sometime. You guys are always welcome. RWS, come on over. If you got something cool that our audience needs to know about, that's the whole point. And that goes for you guys listening as well out there. If you got a cool story to tell, got some audience or got some value to add for the Nimdzi Insights audience, let's do a Nimdzi live session. Talk to me. I'm very approachable. You can DM me on LinkedIn. Once again, if you're not already subscribed to Nimdzi Insights, go ahead and do that right now so that you will be notified when we do these live streams. With that, I would ask you all to join me in the comments section, in the likes. If you're on LinkedIn, smash that thumbs up button to show your appreciation for John and Mihai for joining us today. All right.
Thanks, Tucker.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
guys. Well, I got to work on a more classy outro. I just end up talking
That's
myself.
Good. It's almost perfect.
Next time, guys.
Ciao.
So.